Okay, so we will go ahead and get started, and hopefully I think we've got folks joining us on the Zoom and on Facebook Live. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the Homefront Rising, your military spouse cabinet series. And if you missed the first two, they are up on the website. You can catch the replays there and watch them at your convenience. But I wanted to start first of all, kind of acknowledging, this week's events and the horrific attack on the Capitol, something that really, hit home for me. I live about 5 blocks away. And so just a really unnerving day, listening to the sirens and the shouting and everything going on there. And I know folks, some groups were rescheduling things. I just thought it was really important in light of what happened to move forward with this discussion on public service and civic leadership. I think we need that conversation to be happening now more than ever. And I know Lauren and hopefully some of the other founders of Homefront Rising are tuned in, and the reason they founded this initiative because they believed in military spouses as leaders. And I really hope that what happened this week isn't scaring folks away from public service. We need good leaders to step up and serve, and that's exactly what Homefront Rising is all about. So don't want to make this all about that, but just wanted to kind of say that to start and just acknowledge the moment that we're in. And I'm excited to be here talking with a military spouse who did step up and ran for office. We have Alexia Palacios-Peters here, who is a Navy spouse, a fellow attorney. We actually work together, and we're both attorneys for the federal government. And I wanted Alexia to come and speak, and I'll have you kind of introduce yourself as well. But Alexia ran for school board in Coronado, California, and was ultimately not successful. But I think that's a really important conversation to be having as well, about the learning process, and that a lot of people run again before they're successful. So I really appreciate you coming here to have this conversation with us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I don't know if you're on screen or not, Alexia, my screen's being all funky, but would love for you to kind of share a little bit about your background, your military affiliation, and how you decided to run for the school board in Coronado.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me, Libby. I'm excited to be here. It's not letting me start my video, and that's fine, but that's why I'm not on video.
I'll see if I can work some technology magic and make
I'll go ahead and speak a little bit about myself. So my name is Alexia. I'm originally from Corpus Christi, Texas, where I met my husband. He's a naval aviator here in Coronado, California. And I went to law school after moving here. I'm sure a lot of you had to pivot your careers to go along with your active duty spouses' careers. And I've been fortunate that we've spent most of our time in San Diego with one stint in DC. And so being in San Diego for most of the time, being in San Diego for most of the time, I was really able to establish myself more in the community. But running for this last cycle, I was a newcomer to the area. People, I wasn't born and raised in Coronado. I wasn't a local. And that's something that came up in the race. But I do have 3 children. I have a 2nd grade daughter, a 5th grade son, and a 8th grade son. And so being involved in the schools and in the school board was important to me, and having a voice. And a recurring theme that I had seen was having a military spouse or an active duty spouse voice, not retired military, but somebody who's in it and living it. And so that was one of the reasons that I chose to run for the school board here. I'm not sure how much more you want me to say.
No, I think that's great. And I mean, one of the questions I wanted to talk about is how you utilized, or how you did talk about your military spouse status when you were running. Because I think, just like you were talking about in the employment setting, sometimes we're really scared to bring up that we are a military spouse, right? Like, you don't want that held against you. And so one of the things we hear from Homefront Rising attendees, and I should say we're proud that you're a Homefront Rising alum.
Yeah.
You've been to the events before, so love that. And so, the conversations that happen there, where people think like there is going to be discrimination and people are going to like, oh, military spouse, like you're just moving again. Why would I vote for you? Right. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about how you navigated that, especially in an area like Coronado, which is there's a lot of military families there. So you would think it would be a plus, right? So just kind of curious about how you thought about, that when you decided to run, and were you going to talk about it or not talk about it? I know from watching your campaign, you decided to talk about it, but just kind of wondering if you could share that thought process.
Yes, I chose to highlight it, given that this is a military community. I really learning more about the history of Coronado. It was founded it was military only. It was way back to Vietnam before. It wasn't even connected to the mainland. There was no bridge. You had to take a ferry. And so it was only military families that lived here. And there's a lot of that history here of people, either their parents were in the military, their spouses were in the military, they're retired, their spouses are retired. And so I really thought that would be helpful in running. And I think a fair amount of people liked that. They liked that piece. I just think ultimately it wasn't enough with the population here, which is over half is 65 plus, and they don't necessarily have an interest in the school district because they don't have any kids in it. There's no, dog in that fight. And so I don't think fully appreciated what being a military spouse would bring to the school board. Given that the population for the school district does have a significant amount of military students that are coming in. There are several housing complexes for officer and enlisted on Coronado. And so that the children are coming here. But it did bring, I think, a lot of the military spouse community out. I had a lot of support for military spouses. What I think we see a lot is a lot of the military spouses, we don't vote where we live. And the active duty don't vote where they live. And so as much as they supported me, they couldn't vote for me. And so it was trying to navigate just the networks, though, of really, somebody who can vote here. Military spouses, we make friends. We make friends with everybody. We get in our communities and we get in there quickly because we're going to be probably leaving in 2 years. And so there was a lot of that outreach. And when it came to campaigning on the corner or knocking on doors, it was the military spouses that really came out and were there supporting me. And I was super appreciative of that. And I think that, we ran a good campaign highlighting it. I think it was the right decision. I think it was just, I was a little bit newer to Coronado, and so I didn't have as much name recognition. But we're just going to keep working on that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's important to hear that in some it's a positive, right? Like, it's not something that we should necessarily hide away from. And how do you even hide that? Once you're talking about your resume and your experience, a lot of times I think it's going to be pretty obvious. So how do we talk about it in a positive way?
So I think the most difficult part was navigating the Hatch Act potential for the active duty spouse, which, of course, there was a call to the JAG at the beginning of this, just to make sure that nothing was going to be violated and we knew the parameters. And I mean, there's no problem for military spouse. As a military spouse, we are not subject to the Hatch Act. And my husband, while he wasn't front and center, was able to support the campaign because it was a nonpartisan race as well. So there was no partisan politics in this necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wonder if we can backtrack a little and you can just talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. Like once you decide, okay, I'm doing this, like walk through a little bit, filing, like you said, going to talk to the JAG, setting up the campaign bank account. Like what are some of the nuts and bolts things that you had to do once you officially launched? Or did you like decide to launch, put up a Facebook page, start working through those issues? Like how did the logistics play out?
So I launched early for the school board. Most people didn't announce until right when the time frame to file opened, and so I announced back in March, and the time frame wasn't until closer to July, August. And the first thing I did was get a campaign treasurer. I definitely was not going to mess with the campaign finances piece. And she was the one that was the only money I spent on any employee or part of the campaign was that, and that was money well spent. And she opened the account and she helped file paperwork with inform me how to file the paperwork with the state. And then came the Facebook page, and then I actually got more involved in the issues and getting out. Unfortunately, my launch happened right as we shut down for COVID. So what was going to be a nice, fun in-person launch became a Facebook launch for that piece, and that was a difficult part. But moving forward, I was nervous and scared and worried that I wouldn't get things filed correctly. But you just kind of figure it out, and it was easier than I thought filing with the registrar of voters here locally and getting that paperwork submitted. That wasn't too bad. And then, we just kind of build the plane as we flew it. It was a campaign team of 3, and starting small and local. There was really Facebook, get on the certain Facebook pages that were local, Coronado Electorate 92118, and others, the local newspaper, which doesn't necessarily work in a lot of places, but in Coronado, they read their weekly paper. And so those were the big things. And interestingly enough, more people reached out to me, and that's kind of how the campaign went. One of the Facebook pages, they invited all the candidates to submit 30-second answers to questions they had weekly for about 6 weeks. And so that was, okay, we're doing this. And putting on that production was a learning experience. And then the newspaper also reached out and they said, we're going to be asking you guys questions, and here they are for the next 5 weeks, and submit 250 words or less, your response, and we'll print them. So it really came to us instead of us trying to, what are we going to get in the paper as much? It kind of came to the candidates more.
Yeah.
And then the forums, that was the final piece, is the local Coronado Democratic Club, Rotary Club, and the school PTO associations reached out to us to set up the forums. So a lot of that was done for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is going to sound silly, like, yeah, I hadn't even thought about COVID, and how that, you launch right around the time that is all settling in. So that has to just completely change, well, I guess that's the question, is, does that completely change your campaign strategy? Obviously how you can outreach to people, but how big of an impact did that have?
I think it was a big impact for me, not being as entrenched in the community as some of the other candidates. We'd lived here before, but we didn't have kids at the time, and now we're been back for a couple years. And I'm an extrovert and I'm a joiner, and I like to be at things, and that's where I meet people. And having no events, no local things to go to and meet people, I think that hurt my campaign. And then there was a thought, do we go door to door? Are people going to be okay with that? Is that going to alienate voters? How's that going to look? ultimately we decided to do it, and it was good. People weren't turned off by that. But I think with the inability to have, the in-person meets, let's meet for, cocktail hour at somebody's house. Can you invite 10 of your friends and let me meet them and meet the voters? It came down to about 330 votes is what I lost by. And we got over 3,000. So that's really good because I don't know 3,000 people at Coronado. So I think that would have made a difference. But I certainly don't blame that. We ran a great campaign. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. What I'm gonna ask the interview question. What was the best and what was the most rewarding part and what was the most challenging part of running?
The most rewarding part was meeting the voters. And I know a lot of candidates say it and it sounds, cheesy, but I had some great conversations with people knocking on doors. As much as I did not want to knock on doors, and it's just intimidating because you don't know how the reaction is going to be. And I had some bad reactions that were, they weren't awful, but just, negative. I'm not voting for you. Okay, thanks. Thank you for that. There were other people that really wanted to talk about the issues. They wanted to talk about bullying in our schools here, local issues. And, my job was to sit there and listen to them and then, tell them why they should vote for me. And I would, help that situation. So that was really one of the most rewarding parts. And having my children see it actually was a really big part that I didn't think about in the beginning. My middle child, I actually invited him to come be on the Zoom with me today. My campaign manager over there, he did a lot of door to door with me. He had the spiel down. He thought he could knock on doors by himself because he knew it. He proudly wore my campaign shirt and was out there. And so, and I heard from other military spouses that they were appreciative of the opportunity of their children to see being a part of it and seeing a candidate run. So that was the most rewarding. The most challenging is asking for money, calling people and asking for money. Because even on this local campaign, we raised somewhere between $8,000 to $9,000, which is no small feat. But my real campaign manager, aka my spouse, was daily. You need to call people. You need to call people. Are you doing call time? Are you doing call time? And it's hard to do it, but people want to help. I emailed people and it was, you feel kind of uncomfortable, but if you don't ask, they're not going to give you. That's really what it comes down to. Even if they're your best friend, they're not thinking about how you need funds for your campaign. And so, most people ask, my friends, it's of course, yeah, where do I send it? And so that was the most challenging part, was raising the money and stressing about, is there going to be enough for flyers? How many flyers should we do? Why are flyers so expensive? All those things.
All the math, which is exactly why we went to law school to do.
Right. Which is why I hired a treasurer. Don't do numbers.
So before we kind of move in, we'll open it up for Q&A here in a minute. But kind of just what is your takeaway advice for a military spouse who's watching this now and thinking, is this something I want to do, don't want to do? What's your advice to, go for it? And then what?
So I thought about running for probably about 15 years. It's been a long coming, and I finally decided I need to do it or quit talking about it. And it was getting over that fear of, am I going to lose? And that fear of, what are people going to say about me? Probably. And luckily this was a very nice, lovely campaign. There was no mudslinging, nothing like that. But you do need to have a tough skin, because there are going to be forums, there are going to be people saying some things about you that aren't going to be flattering. But what I've seen after losing, and at some point in the campaign, I think I was so proud of myself and so happy with what I was doing. I truly enjoyed the campaign, that I knew that it was okay if I lost. And not that I liked it and not that I wasn't upset, but it wasn't the end of the world. You know, you keep moving on and there's still work to be done. And just because I'm not in that elected position doesn't mean that I can't still do things for my community. I can't still do the work. And what I've seen is that I believe I can actually have more of an impact not being in the elected position than now, because people are reaching out to me to be in other positions, on other boards, on other commissions, and I've gotten my name out there, and I'm able to, and I got the issue out there about active duty and military, and for here, what our kids are going through. I ran because my husband was deployed for almost a year, and that affected my children in their learning. And some teachers didn't understand that. They didn't see that. And that to me was unacceptable. So I think if you're thinking about running and you know your reason why you're running, you know, do it. There's plenty of support. There's plenty of resources and training such as Homefront Rising that are willing to help you. I mean, Libby, you and I live on opposite sides of the coast now, but Libby helped me a ton. She got me in articles and connected with me with people that got my name out there and supported me. I felt it, even if we don't talk a lot, I felt it. And, you know, from MSJDN. And so we're there for you.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I mean, that's absolutely what Homefront Rising is all about. And a lot of it may be behind the scenes. So I hope folks who are thinking about running, please do reach out to us. We're not going to know unless, you know, well, like I already stalk Alexia on Facebook. So I mean,
no, but it's true. I mean, you have to reach out and ask for that help. And I think it's hard, probably especially as a military spouse. Like, we just kind of do it, right? We just kind of deal with it when they're gone deployed, and we handle everything, and it's hard to ask for help. But you 100% need to, and people want to help you.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. So we will, if there's questions, please, you can use the function to raise your hand, and I'll unmute folks. You can also ask it in the chat. I'm going to check on the Facebook chat as well. So we'll give folks a minute here if you want to raise your hands and ask Alexia a question. And I see one comment here. Oh, Beverly. Hi, Beverly. I attended a campaign launch this morning on Zoom. COVID has really affected campaigning. Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. People already launching. I mean, it's a short cycle. I mean, once we recovered, we started thinking, are we going to run for this position again? We've saved all the signs we have. Or are we going to look at something else? And I think we're just going to follow what's going on locally here and see what doors open up probably in the next 6 months to a year.
Excellent. Let's see. I see.
Beverly has a raised hand, but I don't know what to do with that.
Okay, here we go. Yes. Okay, Beverly, you should be unmuted.
I think I am.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you, Libby. And Alexia, I'm so happy to hear that you're still interested, whether you run again or not. I encourage you to run again.
We're not done, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You are already a wonderful candidate. I honestly, I'm going to take your name down and I'm going to offer to help you, because if you ever wanted it, I'm out in Massachusetts, if you can't tell by my accent.
I'm writing your name down.
I have been on our local school committee for 18 years. And I have been in, I was trying to count while we were talking, I think it's 6 or 7 campaigns. It's 6 for school committee, and then At least 2, I ran for state representative.
Oh, wow.
Two very, very different races. Local nonpartisan races are extremely different than a partisan race. And
Absolutely.
you have so much going for you already. And I'm glad you saved your signs too. You'll need them. But really, it is a very rewarding. The fact of being a military spouse has come into play many times for me. My husband's in the reserves, always activated, but he's in the reserves 28 years now and still a couple to go. And it's amazing outside of the military how few people can understand the impact of a parent's military service on the children, especially in school.
Right.
So you've got a really wonderful voice to try to help people understand that, because it's a real necessary piece. People are becoming more aware, but still, unless you're on a base with the school on the base, people in the larger communities, they just don't understand some of the special facts that the children deal with in the schools. And I will tell you, in a partisan race, not just because of the Hatch Act, but in a partisan race, the military service comes into play a lot more than a nonpartisan race, at least out here. And I do have some friends who are also in the military and serve. They're state representatives.
Oh,
and
wow.
we've talked about this, and it's kind of like a little support group.
Yeah.
So I'll bring you into that if you'd like. But
Oh, yes, please.
glad, don't give up. Don't give up. It's really a wonderful thing to do. And it's really a lot of fun. I was waiting to hear what the best part was. And I agree with you. Meeting the voters, you meet some of the nicest people, and you can learn from the ones that don't support you. And
Right.
you pick up on a lot of different things as you go through, but the best part is meeting all of those people and talking with them, and your circle of friends just keeps growing and growing.
Thank you, Beverly. I love that.
You're welcome. And you didn't start too early either. I don't know, Libby, I don't know if you can see my camera, but when we got this booklet, courtesy of MSJDN, this is my campaign color, a little different, but it's green. But I want you to know that our election is not until November, but I've already started working on my next campaign. I'm up for re-election, and I'm using my MSJDN notebook to
Yes.
all the things I need to do. And I have a friend who's got a Cricut, and I don't know if you can see this, but I stuck that on the back of the book.
Oh, we can't see that, but that's amazing.
Oh, it's a picture. It's a silhouette of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Fight for the things you care about. I'll take a picture and stick it on Facebook.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But thank you so much for supporting people through Homefront Rising. The military voice needs to be out there. It's been too isolated. Yeah. And for some people, that's very convenient. And I'm glad that spouses are speaking up and running, that military members, when they finish their service, they're running. And it's a good thing. It'll help the whole country, whether you're at the school board level or Congress. It's very important.
I agree.
Absolutely. We're making Beverly our spokesperson going forward.
Wait till I lose 20 pounds.
Yeah, we're all there with you with the COVID pounds here. So
exactly, yeah.
Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions, comments, thoughts?
There's a couple in the chat.
Are there? Let's see. Oh, will there be another training in DC this year? I'm sorry if you can hear my dog snoring in the background. I love that.
I can't.
Very serious conversation and he's snoring away. So I think like last year we took Homefront Rising online. We did it virtually, and I suspect that will be the stance that we're in again this year. I mean, things are changing, so we're playing it a little bit by ear, but there will be another Homefront Rising conference in May, whether that is here in DC or in person kind of remains TBD. So we'll be sharing some information on that. We are going to continue these series, the Your Military Spouse Cabinet series. So we've done 2 already. Like I said, if you've missed those, they're up on the website. You can catch the replays, and we're going to continue doing these leading up until May. The other thing I wanted to say that's on the website is we just launched the Military Spouses Guide to Running for Office. So you can download that, and would love everybody's thoughts, especially folks like Beverly and Alexia and other folks who have run. You know, once you take a look at it, let us know what other resources you think would be helpful, because we want to continue to build out these resources for everyone. But the guide kind of talks through some of these issues. How involved can your service member spouse be? How do you get engaged in a new community? How do you talk about your service as a military spouse? And we talk also a little bit about appointments and boards, but mostly it's running for office. So if you're thinking about it, download your copy, totally free. Just go to the website and you can pull the PDF from there. Let's see. How can military spouses get involved with helping a campaign? Alexia, do you want to talk a little bit about how you recruited volunteers?
Yes. So, I mean, you basically reach out to the campaign. We had a website and Facebook page and put on their volunteer contact list. And so if you want to get involved with helping a campaign, reach out to them. I think most campaigns, they want volunteers, they need volunteers. I certainly could have utilized mine, I think, a little bit more. But that's really the best way is to reach out to the campaign, especially the local candidates. They don't have a big staff, if any staff at all. And so anybody who can help them, that's a big piece. I'm connected with the local spouses clubs, the Naval Officer Spouses Club of San Diego. I'm currently the president for that. So I had kind of a reach in that role, although I kept separate running for office, but of course people connected the two. And so, and you know, other clubs and organizations, but that would be my recommendation, is just check out their website and their Facebook page. And if you're, I mean, you don't need to have any experience, but if you have any social media experience, or you just love being on the Insta, or which is the better thing than Facebook now, or whatever, I mean, they will certainly be able to utilize your help, taking photos. Everything I did was done by a friend who really knew how to use her iPhone 11 camera. And we used the Apple resource. We made our own videos and took our own photos, and she was able to edit them. My father-in-law did some photos for me that I could use for flyers. And so really it's utilizing volunteers and people who have special skills, get them involved. That was a huge piece. I don't know if you guys know how much a photographer costs to take professional photos, but my poor father-in-law, I dragged him all over Coronado, 3 different locations with a wardrobe change at each and makeup shift. And he did them all. And then my other friend just kind of photoshopped them a little bit and took this out, and we were good to go. So yeah, there are so many ways you can help. It doesn't necessarily need to be knocking on doors or phone calls, but that's also a help as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it depends. We're talking about local elections today, and I think smaller campaigns are going to be much more in need of assistance and probably willing to put you to use, you know, like you said, doing social media, helping with comms, whatever it might be. if you're looking at like a congressional race, or I'm sure a lot of folks volunteered in 2020, some of these bigger ones, you might be doing phone banking or door knocking or whatever it might be. So don't be, offended if you're like, I have all of this experience. And they're like, well, we need you to man the phones because that just may be their significant need
Right.
at the time. So, you're not going to pop into, like a presidential campaign and be like running social media right off the bat. So I think you have to think kind of strategically too about what level of campaign you want to get involved in. And do you know someone like Alexia where somebody knows you already and is, maybe willing to put a little bit more into your hands.
And I think you find you make more of an impact when you're on more of a local race.
Absolutely.
Because you can really see the votes coming in or the money coming in. You're really seeing the impact. I mean, we also, my poor one friend, she also built my website for me. She had that experience. And so writing content, getting it online, getting the pictures where they need to be. But you really see that impact. I know owners of local businesses now because of conversations that we had while I was standing on the corner waving my campaign sign. So I really think that the local smaller races, you'll see there's only 5 seats on our school board. So that's 1 of 5. You're definitely making more of an impact.
Yeah. And the other thing I was gonna say is it's not all fundraising. Like I think people think if you're volunteering for a campaign, like it's absolutely going to involve fundraising. And that's just not always the case. Like I said, you could be phone banking, you could be knocking on doors, you can be doing comms. Like there are so many other things. If fundraising is what you want to do, I'm sure people are going to say yes. Nobody's going to turn away a good fundraiser. But that absolutely does not have to be, what your focus is. And I think sometimes people think, oh, if I volunteer, they're just going to want me to be asking people for money. And it's absolutely not the case.
Right.
I think, let's see, any other, I can't see. Alexia, can you see who else has their hand raised? It's not showing on my end for some reason.
Let's see.
Or if someone wants to put in the chat, I can unmute you.
Jessica Rutz, I can't see.
Oh, Jessica. Okay, I can unmute.
Let me hit allow to talk.
There we go.
There we go.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Okay. Sorry, I've never done it this way. I'm on my phone.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Oh. Sorry. So I'm originally from San Diego, California. I grew up there. My husband was stationed at Miramar in the Pendleton, and then he joined the National Guard, and we moved to Northern Michigan. And since living up here for about 5 years now, we've started making connections with people who are now grooming me for some crazy reason to start doing a lot of campaigning and policy work and advocacy. And while I have a passion for it, I also feel very lost. And I have missed the training in DC the last 3 years. So I'm really looking forward to doing the training if possible. But when is a good time to start kind of putting together your thoughts? And if you were to actually jump headfirst into being a state representative, when would be a good time to start looking into that and planning for that?
I think as soon as possible. As soon as you know that you want to run for that, start putting everything together. If you've identified, the seat, what are the issues you're going to focus on? How are you going to run? So where do you file? When are the deadlines? Set up your committee now. If you're ready to start fundraising for it, then get a treasurer, set up your campaign committee and account so you can start taking funds, because I think that's a big piece I would redo. Is I launched in March, and I think in January I had my campaign committee, and I should have started raising money that early. People weren't as interested in giving money to a local school board race, but I'm sure I would have found some friends that would have given me $20 here and there. So because you're going to want that money as soon as you fully launch for signs and for flyers and to pay for the website domain. And so you want to start pulling some of that money in now, and be ready for that. And there are, besides Homefront Rising and the resources that they have online, there's a lot of other opportunities for organizations that are trying to help women run. I've done the Emerge California stuff. They had a boot camp training over a weekend. That was great. I don't know if they're in Michigan. Emily's List has a ton of resources. Run Women. There's a ton of organizations. And so look at everything you can and bring the information in, so that way you're ready to go. I felt a little bit behind the 8 ball when I took the training and was thinking, I guess I should have a better budget idea. But again, lawyer numbers, not my forte, but it's never too early if you're looking at it and starting to get all your research and everything together.
Yeah, it's daunting because I'm the chair of the Realtor Party Action Committee up here. So I've got a lot of the advocacy down in that respect with things that I know what to talk about.
Good.
It's the overall crazy and going from active duty to National Guard, I've got this crazy amount of experience with how that transition really is terrible in many aspects, but it's also very beneficial once it's done. So and we just elected our new rep, so he just started a week ago, so it's a 2-year seat at this point. So if 2 years out is a good idea, then I will start putting stuff together, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to, especially for a state seat, it's going to take a lot of that. It's going to take a lot of that time to get it going, and then it'll kick in more later, but there's a lot of work you can do now to get yourself set up for when it really kicks into gear. You're not going to be knocking on doors right now, but you're going to want to network as much as you can. And I mean, you already are, but keep cultivating those relationships. And again, I mean, I hate to say it, but you got to bring in some money so that way you're ready to pay for all those signs and mailers and all that stuff.
And Jessica, there's Veterans Campaign does some really great kind of nuts and bolts workshops on how to stand up a campaign and do a lot of the stuff that Alexia is talking about, setting up the campaign accounts and just the really like the logistics side of it that you do want to have in place. And like she said, I don't think it's too early to start working on some of those things. So the Military Spouse Guide to Running for Office has a resource list at the end that talks about a lot of these groups, Veterans Campaign, She Should Run, that do these workshops and can walk you through some of the logistics, but also reach out to us. I saw Lauren, one of the Homefront Rising founders, comment here, and we can connect you. If you shoot us an email at homefrontrising@gmail.com. Lauren is from Michigan, and I know she would be happy to start plugging you in there. So definitely reach out to us and we can help talk through this a little bit more. But I totally agree with Alexia that it's never too early to start. And
I will say one more thing. It is daunting and it's scary. Where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think as a lawyer, a realtor, I mean, you know what you're doing. I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing realtor stuff and all the hundreds of documents. But once you get going, you'll be fine. I'm sure you are more than capable of doing it. It's just taking the first step, and then you'll be rocking and rolling.
Yeah, it's that feeling of jumping into a 100-foot pool head first.
You just have to, but it'll only be like 5 feet. Hopefully you're 5'1.5" at least like me, and then you'll be fine.
Barely make that 5'5" mark, maybe. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, so we're over. I told Alexia this would be 30 minutes. We're way past that, but I think this is a great.
I knew.
We're always going to go over. Let me make sure. talked about the guide, talked about our resources. Like I said, homefrontrising@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. Please let us know if you have ideas about speakers or additional resources or just questions. Please reach out. And that's exactly what Homefront Rising is here for. We don't have, we're not doing a lot of the nuts and bolts, stuff that some of these other groups are, but we want to be the conduit for you. So we can plug you into the resources that'll help you out and take you to that next level and get you ready to dive into the pool. So thank you so much, Alexia. And I know we're all ready to support your next run. So just let us know when that happens.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for being such a big support.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend, everyone.